Welcome to the debate. Today, we are looking at a shift in the educational landscape that, well, it forces us to confront a very old, very uncomfortable question. How do we actually define intelligence? We're analyzing the massive expansion of the International Academic Competitions, or IAC. Specifically, their strategic move to open up United States regional tournaments to students from all over Canada, Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean.
And it's a huge geographical expansion for sure. But after spending time with their source materials, the strategic partnership scripts, the unlocking potential guide, it's pretty clear this isn't just about drawing new lines on a map. It's about exporting a very specific philosophy of learning. The IAC pitches itself as an essential tool for building what they call mental agility.
Right. And that is the core tension we're tackling today. The source material frames the ability to recall facts under pressure as a superpower. So the question is the ability to answer a history or science question in seconds a genuine intellectual skill we should be cultivating? Or does this model just reduce complex learning to high-stress trivia? I'm going to argue that these competitions fill a critical and often ignored gap for high-performing students. They teach the valuable life skill of thinking fast with precision, and maybe even more importantly, they provide a necessary social tribe for academic achievers.
And I'm going to take the opposing view. I think that framing trivia, and let's be clear, the material itself uses that exact word, as a primary educational value is reductive. I'll argue that while these competitions are, sure, fun, they're pedagogically narrow. I mean, the source material flat out admits this program is not for any student, and I really question whether reviving a post-war tradition of academic clubs is the best way to foster the kind of deep, slow, deliberative thinking we actually need.
A fair challenge. Let's get into the specifics of what this mental agility actually looks like.
Let's do it.
Okay, so to understand why I think this is so valuable, you have to look at how the IAC defines the core skill they're testing. In their strategic partnership presentation, they use a phrase that really stuck with me: saber rápido con precisión y bajo presión, knowing fast with precision and under pressure. Now, I see why you might just brush that off as a parlor trick, but I would frame it differently. This isn't just memorization. The source material describes it as mental agility. It's the ability to connect ideas efficiently when the clock is ticking.
But efficient connection can often look a lot like surface-level association. My issue isn't with knowing things, it's with the premium that's placed on speed.
But speed is a reality of the modern world. Look at the diagnosis of the school system they provide in their strategic partnership document. They point out that schools often fail to challenge high-performing students, and that leads to demotivation. We have kids with high capacity who are just bored out of their minds. This competition provides a real context for academic rigor. And for international students, it provides a real context for using English that, standard curricula just miss. It turns abstract knowledge into an active, high-stakes skill.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that speed is the missing ingredient that cures academic boredom. You mentioned the strategic partnership document, but let's look at the diagnosis they offer a little closer. They explicitly state IAC is not for any student. It's an exclusive model by design. And where does this model even come from? The source material tells us it's a tradition, originated in the post-war period that evolved from academic clubs and trivia games on radio and TV.
Well, traditions can be valuable. Just because it has roots in the post-war era doesn't make it obsolete.
H&B, or they can be anachronisms. We're talking about a pedagogical model based on the mid-20th century media landscape. The material explicitly links this to trivia games. My concern is that by elevating this to a critical educational pillar, we risk prioritizing the gamification of knowledge over the actual nuance of understanding. We're teaching students that the right answer is the one you can shout the fastest. That might be fun, as the brochure says. It might even be exhilarating, but is it learning or is it just retrieving?
I think you're creating a false dichotomy between fast and deep that doesn't necessarily exist. But let's dig into that, because this is our first core area of debate: the superpower of pressure versus the depth of learning.
Let's.
The Unlocking Potential Guide is very bold here. It calls thinking under pressure a superpower. And I agree with them. Look at the breakdown in the text. They define knowing fast not as rote memory, but as the capacity to connect ideas, remember key information, and formulate an answer efficiently. That is a transferable skill. The guide explicitly links this to real-world scenarios, job interviews, public speaking, taking important exams. These are all moments where you can't just pause for 10 minutes to consult the textbook or ruminate on the nuance. You have to perform. The IAC argues this is training a muscle. If we don't train high-performing students to handle that pressure, we are doing them a huge disservice.
That's a compelling argument for executive function, but have you considered what we lose when we focus so much on the muscle of speed? The material repeatedly links this skill to trivia and games. When we tell a student that their intelligence is measured by their reaction time, we are rewarding a very specific neurotype. We are rewarding the quick processor. But some of the greatest thinkers in history, science, geography, the very subjects these Bs cover, they were slow, deliberate thinkers. They weren't agile in this sense, they were profound. I just worry that if we treat this pressure as a superpower, we're implicitly telling the thoughtful, slower student that they are somehow less intelligent.
I'm not convinced by that because it ignores the second part of the definition, con precisión, with precision. The guide says this is about the confidence of knowing your answer is correct. It distinguishes between just guessing and actual mastery. To answer quickly and correctly requires a deep, pre-existing familiarity with the material. You can't fake mental agility on a question about 19th century geopolitics. You have to know it, cold. So in a way, this speed is just the proof of the depth. If you have to think about it for 5 minutes, do you really know it?
Or do you just know about it? There's a difference between recalling a date and understanding a cause. But let's move to the second aspect, because I think this is where your argument has more weight, though I still have reservations. The social aspect.
The tribe argument, yes. This, to me, is the heart of the matter. The strategic partnership script asks a very poignant question to school administrators. Do you consider that your high-performing academic students have enough social activities to connect with other people who share their interests?
It's a valid question. The loneliness of the smart kid is a trope for a reason.
It is more than a trope. It's a structural failure of our schools. The source material highlights that the extracurricular landscape is predominantly sports. We have a culture that celebrates physical agility with rallies and trophies, but it leaves the intellectual student in isolation. The IAC provides a counterbalance. It offers activities to connect with others who share their interests. It turns solitary studying into a social event. It validates their passion publicly.
I absolutely acknowledge the social benefit. Isolation among high achievers is a real problem. But I have to question the method of connection. The source material contrasts this directly with sports, which implies that academic validation has to come through a similar winning-losing framework. It frames the alternative academic experience as a mirror image of physical competition. It uses terms like varsity and junior varsity. Is that really the right way to build a community of thinkers? By pitting them against each other to see who can identify a capital city the fastest?
But look at what they are actually doing in that arena. They are discussing maps, historical battles, and scientific formulas. That's from the text. The competition is just the structure, the skeleton, but the flesh and blood of the interaction is shared passion. The guide says it's about the incredible feeling of making a historical or scientific reference and having others not only understand it, but celebrate it with you. That is a tribe. Whether it's a competition or a seminar, finding peers who speak your language is absolutely vital for retention and, frankly, for happiness.
I can argue with the joy of being understood. That resonates. But I do worry that by adopting the sports model, that varsity language they use, we're validating intellect only when it's competitive. We're saying, you are smart because you beat someone else. But let's look at who actually gets to be part of this tribe. This brings us to the logistics and the elite nature of this expansion.
This is where the new expansion is so exciting, though. This is an opening of doors. We are seeing a globalization of this tribe.
Are we? Or is it a cracked window? Let's scrutinize the logistics they lay out in the announcement.
It sounds incredibly open on the surface.
Well, I mean, previously, these regional tournaments were limited to U.S. students. Now, the source says students from Canada, Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean can participate. That is a massive increase in access. It means a student in Buenos Aires can compete in the same ecosystem as a student in Boston.
It is a theoretical increase in access. Look at the details, the fine print. The online regional qualifying exam, the ORQE, is free. That's great. K-8 students can take it from home. But what happens if they pass? To compete in the nationals, where do they have to go?
They compete in the USA Varsity National Championships in Arlington, Virginia, or the Elementary School Championships in Orlando, Florida.
Exactly. Arlington or Orlando. So if you're a brilliant student in rural Peru or a history buff in Mexico City, the pathway to this tribe involves international air travel, visas, hotels, registration fees. The source explicitly states that IAC does not currently offer national competitions in Mexico, Central America, South America, or the Caribbean. So what we're creating is a funnel that's wide at the top, the free online exam, but incredibly narrow and expensive at the bottom. It filters for economic privilege just as much as it does for academic merit.
I see your point. And it is a hurdle. I won't deny that. International travel is expensive. But you have to start somewhere. You can't just snap your fingers and have infrastructure in 20 countries overnight. The source material frames this as participation in USA events. It's an invitation to join an established infrastructure. And for those who do qualify, it leads to the International History Olympiad or the International Environmental Science Olympiad. These are global mobility opportunities. For a student who proves their merit, this is a chance to step onto a world stage they wouldn't otherwise have access to.
It's a complex system, though. The rules are messy, which just reinforces my feeling that this is a patchwork, not a true expansion. The text notes that Canadian students have their own division. They can do some U.S. regionals but not the History B, because those overlap with competitions offered by IAC's Canadian division. It creates a very tiered, bureaucratic system of access. It's not a seamless global community. It's a labyrinth of eligibility.
It's a growing global community, and the fact that they are welcoming these students at all shows a desire to break down those borders, even if the logistics are currently complex. But I want to pivot to why schools would even sign up for this. We've talked about the students, but the source material is very revealing about the institutional incentives.
Oh, it certainly is. This is our fourth topic, the strategic value to schools versus student well-being. And this is where the mask slips a little bit for me.
I don't think it's a mask. I think it's a business proposition. The strategic partnership script is a pitch to school administrators, and it makes a very strong case. It argues that this program helps differentiate institutions in a crowded market. It mentions that differentiating between similar schools is a complex challenge. Schools need a way to stand out.
Right. And this is where I get uncomfortable. The student becomes an asset for brand differentiation.
But that benefits the student, doesn't it? If a school invests in academic competitions to distinguish itself, it means they are investing resources in those students. The script says this reinforces the academic value perceived by the community and can even support an adjustment in the tuition structure.
Or structure of pensions.
Excuse me?
In the translated script, there's a line that suggests this can support an adjustment in the structure of pensions. It implies that adopting this program justifies charging more, securing the institution's financial future. The whole argument is that the offer is predominantly sports, so if you offer this, you capture the market of academic parents. My concern is that the focus shifts from the intrinsic joy of learning, which the Unlocking Potential Guide talks about so poetically, to the performance of the student as a marketing statistic. The student is no longer just a learner, they're a proof point for the school's value proposition.
But isn't that true of any high-performance program? An orchestra, a football team, a debate club? Schools show off their best to attract more students. What I like about the IAC pitch is that it specifically targets the demotivation of high performers. It acknowledges that without these external challenges, these bright kids just drift away. If marketing the school is the mechanism that gets these kids the engagement they need, I think that's a fair trade. The school gets prestige, the student gets a challenge, everyone wins.
I suppose my hesitation just comes back to the nature of the engagement. The Unlocking Potential Guide says the goal is to review what you have learned in class in a new way. But is it a new way, or is it just a faster way? If we are marketing our schools based on how quickly our students can answer questions, we are reinforcing that speed-obsessed definition of intelligence we discussed at the start. We're telling parents, send your child here, and we will make them quick. I would prefer a school that says, send your child here, and we will make them thoughtful.
And I would argue we are reinforcing precision. You can be thoughtful and wrong. You can be slow and empty. The source material emphasizes that this strengthens the use of English in real contexts for international students. That is a massive, tangible benefit. It's not just about a trophy. It's about operating at a high level in a second language under pressure in a global forum. That is preparation for the modern economy, whether we like the pace of it or not.
That's a fair point on the English language application. Real contexts are rare, and if the pressure of a buzzer forces a student to internalize the language, that is a victory. But I still look at that phrase, IAC is not for any student, and I wonder if we are narrowing the definition of success just a little too much. We're creating a VIP lane for the fast thinkers and leaving the rest in traffic.
Let's bring this to a close because we've covered the philosophy, the social aspect, the logistics, and the institutional strategy.
We have.
For me, the expansion of the international academic competitions is a net positive. The source material clearly identifies a problem. High-performing students are often bored, isolated, and underserved by a sports-dominant culture. By offering a platform for mental agility, knowing fast, with precision and under pressure, the IAC gives these students a tribe.